I'm a professional editor and I've always wanted to expand my horizons by talking to other editors and sound designers, music composers, visual effects supervisors, essentially all the magicians who silently and invisibly work behind the scenes. This series is an attempt to make the invisible artists visible. I hope you enjoy the conversations.
Hemontidi, Jabin, Shweta, Namrata, Nitin, Manas. Thank you guys so much for being here with me for this Zoom session we are doing. One of the things, while I was researching for this podcast, I realized that we don't have, at least I didn't find any roundtables or any discussions between editors. I found, vignettes of directors talking to editors or editors talking about a particular show. But I didn't find much where editors are just talking about editors, let alone extremely successful editors like yourselves. So thank you so much for taking time out for this. I was actually watching an interview by the editor of this series called Euphoria, and he said something interesting. He said that he doesn't consider himself an invisible artist, but he thinks he's a secret weapon. I found that really funny and also very interesting because it also kind of gave an insight into how we perceive editing and how our perception of editing has evolved over a period of time. So I know, speaking for myself, when I was starting off, let's say in college back in Calcutta, for me, editing was extremely basic and just getting a match cut right was really important. And obviously, over a period of time, that concept evolves and you see how much more an editor can do. So, starting with Jabin, can you just tell us how, for you, the perception of editing and the role of an editor has evolved?
Sorry, got to unmute myself. So, I think that, you basically, you understand more and more as you work of like what exactly your work involves. I've personally always felt very uncomfortable with this definition of editing being invisible, because I don't see myself as doing something invisible and I don't want to be invisible. So, of course, I understand that, the story has to flow and cuts don't draw attention to themselves and all that is absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that it's not there, that an editor should be effaced from. When you say something like it's an invisible art, it suggests that somehow we should efface ourselves from the process. So I've understood that that should never be how you approach your work. I don't know how it's changed over the years. I guess you just understand better how to deal with people. That's been my primary learning. And you also, of course, understand what's important and what's not. Like you learn to let go of things. You learn how to kind of get past, like you get past what the director is actually asking you to do, the director or the producer, in order to fulfill their vision, I don't know if this makes any sense, but sometimes like editors, I feel are constantly having to do that. Like people are standing in their own way sometimes when you're working together. Yeah. So you have to learn how to skillfully kind of, not let that happen, because it can become very personal and, you don't want to go there. So that has been a big learning for me. And I think I continue to learn. I'm still not there yet.
Right. Hemant Didi, what about you?
God. How has my thing changed? Not much. But I get what you're saying about the secret weapon. I think that's very true. But it's partly invisible and partly not. Also is true. Like everybody approaches a scene differently. So obviously it will be different the way I cut or Jabin cuts or Nitin cuts, that way. So we can't avoid that. That much of our personality will stay in each cut we do. that that we can't avoid. So it cannot be invisible. But yeah, I mean, it depends on the film. If we click with the film, we do a better job. Then we are a secret weapon, and that way.
Personally, for me, when you say editing is an invisible art, I kind of tend to agree with that. And it's great to be invisible in the right way, but, not ignored. Being invisible is nice, but being ignored isn't, I think, a great thing. Over the years, I'm now happy with fortunately now there are people who understand what this craft is all about and they appreciate that. So as long as I find those bunch of people that I'm working with and the rest I ignore and the rest is just work. So I don't take it too seriously. I know the bunch of people who matter, who I matter to and they matter to me. And so I take it in that manner. So yeah.
Right. Nitin?
For me, when you say editing is invisible, I feel like we love romanticizing every process in filmmaking. So it's one of those words which have been used to romanticize there's like editing needs to be invisible, or these keywords which are used like you shouldn't realize and all that. I don't agree with pretty much like what he says as a editing as a form being invisible in terms of like an editor being invisible. But as what rightly Shweta said, like it's just how you put it in terms of like what aspect you want to be invisible. You don't want your craft. You want your craft to work for the film. Eventually, you're working towards telling a narrative, and that narrative should hold for whoever you are making it for, and should like say what you want to say in like whatever timeline that you have. That's the basic essence of it. In terms of changes, evolution, I feel there is, thankfully, I have seen through not varied phases, but like I've seen through people becoming more receptive. Like that is a massive change that I've seen, because suddenly you are shooting like 200 hours of footage. If you are not receptive, you're obviously dumb to be working in this industry or anything. So that I feel like that reception comes from like the amount of footage that a person is shooting now, and amount of like rushes coming in constantly, and you are on the neck, like you shoot and you are like constantly trying to deliver, like within like 2 days or 3 days you are okay, is that scene ready or something. So those evolution, I feel like because I worked on film with Shweta on Gangs of Wasseypur, and we remember like his footage would come, I would sit at Pixian and we're like the telecine okay and all that process we have seen through. So there was like that time frame that used to be there, that like there was slightly elaborate process which used to be there, director used to come later and all that, and that suddenly has modulated massively. Like that, like time nobody has, like the idea is like a film work nahi karegi, sabke paas mein time hai, but just the creating that impatient feeling that there's no time, that is always there. That is one major evolution I think has happened in terms of for me.
Well, as far as invisibility is concerned, I think I would like only my cuts to be invisible, not my opinions at all, hardly. I like it when, it's not very intrusive. And and that has been a process for me to understand it. When I came from film school, I wanted to be very, very visible. I thought that, one way to shake things up is probably being visible. And now I don't feel that way. I feel that, the audience doesn't need to know at every moment that I'm there, creating this for them. But of course, opinions are not like that. I give, dime to a dozen, too many sometimes. And for me, what has changed the most personally is that I think I've seen also a lot of failures. So I think the focus has become more on enjoying the process now than it was before. For me, always it was about what's the end goal, or this has to, you keep the film really tight and there should not be a moment of disengagement and all that. And slowly it's become more about enjoying, about being with the rushes more. So that has been a personal evolution for me. And of course, now so much is shot that you can create anything, So it really is about how much time you spend with the material and, I mean, what best you can do with it.
Right. I'm going to actually come back to this, something that both you and Jabin have said about, kind of you were saying enjoying the process. And as Jabin said, also trying to save people from themselves almost. So I'm going to come back to that. Manas, do you feel like you've seen an evolution either in your own perception of editing or in editing as a process?
So I think at the very beginning, motion pictures, how we understand today, I think cannot happen without editing. So editing is vital to the process. So anybody calling it a secret weapon is sort of already sort of underrating the position of an editor. He or she is as vital as the writer or the BGM artist or the cameraman of the film. So I feel that editing has been editors have been valuable to the process since the beginning and will continue to be for the core team at least. Who are making the film. You can't make a film without an editor. So that is very true. I've not had much of a the duration of my career has been pretty small, so I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I think in my own perception of how I approach things, the first thing is that I've started learning how to be more patient with myself, with my material, with my directors, storytellers around me, and I'm not very patient in real life. So when I'm in that edit room, I sort of tried to teach myself that, and I hope I'm getting better at it. And I think around us, at least from a decade ago when I started and to now, I do definitely see a change in how producers have now started, looking at editors. They seem to be sort of seeing that there is something that this person brings to the table and he or she is important to the process. Whether that translates into actuals or not, I will not get into that. But I do see that directors still were always very kind, but now even producers are sort of respecting the craft a bit more. I think now we are also dealing with the young generation of producers, so they are also very involved in the craft of making the film. And there is that healthy bunch of people who still consider it as bas table or chair de do or computer de do kaam ho jayega. So
yeah.
So there are all kinds, but always looking for things to be better and positive. The audience, I feel, will never know, should never know, and they should only and only enjoy whatever they are consuming.
Right. I wanted to, as I go back to something that Namrata and Jabin were talking about. Namrata, a while, actually long time back, I had read an interview of yours where you had mentioned that when you were right out of film school, you were very opinionated about how you wanted the edit to be. And gradually you kind of became more of a director's editor. And you felt that it's okay to kind of go with the director's vision to an extent. I often wonder, and I'd love to get some opinions from all of you. How far do you, let's say, if you're not agreeing with something that the director or the producer is saying, how far do you push and how much do you push back? Or do you push back at all?
Of course, lots of pushing back happens. And I mean, you don't just agree with any director. That doesn't happen. But I mean, what I meant when I said that, what you just mentioned, is that, I mean, that whole process of being the psychologist to the director, like what did he or she really want to say? And okay, this is the material. Can we really try and say what she wants to say? To that extent, not being critical or judgmental of what has been shot.
Yeah. So interpreting it closer to what division would potentially be.
Yeah, totally, but not subtracting yourself from the equation at all. In
Right.
fact, I mean, you also figure out over years that how to disagree nicely, or how to disagree in a way that feels more collaborative and constructive rather than "Ye kya shoot kiya hai? Aise nahi."
Right, right. I was also wondering that because since we also mentioned film schools, I think all of us are trained at film institutes. Do you feel like that's been an integral part of your journey, or if you had a chance to start over, would you still choose that route? We have a lot of editors who are not trained at all. So is that? I mean, I do find myself wondering as well that, say, like whatever, several years back, would I have chosen, because I was already working, and it was a big leap of faith for me to go to FTII at that point. So just wondering, Nitin, how do you feel about this? Would you kind of go back and not choose
I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not fully sure, like 100% sure in terms of. I feel film schools are about people you meet. It's not about actually studying or anything. Any art school, actually, it's about like people you meet, Rick, and what are the horizons that you sort of set yourself to. Like in terms of as an artist, as a like any sort of a person whom you want to, whether you're voicing any sort of an opinion, what sort of world that you create around yourself. So I feel that can come from any sort of an aspect. Like I have like associate editors who are working with me who are not no film school background, but they have really strong opinions. They have like really interesting worldview, and that is like a first starting point in terms of having an opinion. Is what for me is like where the editing starts, because the craft is like Nuri Bilge Ceylan sits, like his editor sits with Nuri Bilge Ceylan and he asks Nuri Bilge Ceylan to cut. So editor never sits on the machine. Like he asks on the side and he asks. So it's about like there's a perspective of storytelling, there's a narrative, there's understanding, all that is there. So I feel I learned a lot from literature than just a film school. That's where I still like the amount of books I would read or whatever, the fiction and everything. That is my upbringing in terms of just narrative that dwells into. I still feel like that is a strong resource in terms editing, just like as a film school. Of course, it's the people you meet and like that lets you open up your world and it takes you into watching films and whatever. But it's not a necessary process. Like if you can find these other things today, it's become so many things have become so much accessible. Like you can watch foreign language films. Like that time we used to watch like foreign language films. I would go to Bangalore National Market, buy DVDs, watch it and all that. It's like a process it used to be. So now it's become so much easier. You have access to so many things. So it's like I'll be like 50-50 on it kind of a thing.
Okay. Shweta, how about you?
Interestingly, this was a question which was asked to me during the interview in FTI. They asked me whether, and that was, I think, the last question I was asked whether, and I was 20, I just had finished college, and they asked me whether I would have rather worked and come to the institute, and that time my answer was yes. Maybe I would have worked and had a little bit more understanding of this whole world. But like Nitin said, I agree with him. Everything is accessible. People, entertainment, whatever, media, films, everything is like books are out there. So more than anything else, I think it's life experience and opinion that counts when you bring your game to the table. So film school as such, I don't think is really essential now. Maybe 20 years later, earlier would have been a different ball game, but not now.
Right. Hey, Montidi, how about you?
Yeah, I think same thing that FTI, at least it's what we taught ourselves. I don't think we taught stuff. Yeah. So that amount of stuff, for our generation, we didn't have much access. And even to see a Steam Deck, we didn't have. So that was a different thing. But now everyone can make films and do things on their own and learn stuff. And what you see around and you learn from that. So I don't think you really need film schools anymore.
I did English literature in college, so I have always had my fill of reading and literature and narratives that way. In fact, that is what inspired me to want to be a filmmaker. Uh, I have been to two film schools in that sense. Before FTI, I did a 1 year mass comm course as well,
At
and
Sapphire's, right?
at Sophia Polytech,
Yeah.
the SCM course. It's still a kick-ass course. So that, of course, is not only film. So I really feel that, yeah, when you ask, would you do it again if you had to choose? I would. I would definitely. I think that training has been crucial to what I've learned, because the thing is that you learn more later. What I learned at film school was very important to me, I feel. But after leaving, what I started learning immediately after leaving film school, I was able to build on those things. And I mean, for me, that was important. It's a personal thing. Maybe that's just who I am. But when people say that, and this was, of course, I left FTI in 1995 when, so I think maybe Nitin may not even have been born. So I don't know. So yeah, no, this is true. Yeah, I mean, my assistant currently was certainly not born.
Don't go there, Jabin. That's
So no, this is true. I mean, now I'm letting my hair go grey. I'm 52 years old. So but the point is, so yeah, as Hemanti says, in those days, of course, there was no way you could get a Steenbeck in your hands or anything. Now it's like it's deceptively simple, because anyone, you can edit a film on your phone. Anybody can pick up a camera and shoot anything. So why just editing? You don't need to learn camera. You don't need to learn direction. You don't need to learn any damn thing. You can just do it. You have the tools. So I don't think that the tools have ever been the thing to learn. This is one of my, Hindi mein kehte hain na, takya kalam. This has been one of the things I continuously say.
Even I totally agree with you, Jabi.
It's not about the software. It's not about which button you're going to press, or it's not about is it FCP or is it Avid or is it Steenbeck or is it. I've been through them all. So has Hemanti, and so have a lot of you.
Yeah.
I mean, video, that tape to tape, horrible video editing. We've been through everything. But like my assistant right now, she has been to film school, but during COVID, so I don't think it was like a very fractured kind of training for her. So she's a total fresher. And she's like, oh, I'm very keen to learn from you, which is wonderful. Big boost to my ego and all that. But the fact is that, in a running project, how much can you teach? Teaching is a different space and work is a different space. The requirements of professional life. So this whole thing about learning on the job, yeah, you can learn on the job, but I personally don't think that I would have learned all the things on the job that I learned if I hadn't gone to film school.
Right. Namrata?
I think I agree with Jabin. For me, going to film school was not about learning so much about films, but learning about myself. I got so much time to ask myself vis-a-vis, art, films, paintings. You get the kind of time that you never get afterwards. So for me, that was very interesting. And also now I see all my assistants or people who work with me know all the softwares much better than me. Meko to utna hi aata hai, in, out or overlap. But what is missing, I feel, these days is this X factor, who are you? The addition of you into the story. Like, what take are you bringing to the table? What is your opinion of the world? What is your politics? So, and for that, you need to spend time with yourself and, watch things, read things, question yourself. Why is it evoking this emotion in me? So I feel that process, somehow I really lucked out that I went to film school at the right time and it gave me that space.
Right.
I feel one point I want to add also, I feel a lot to do with like in current, like a lot of people you meet and everything, it's that like because people just go so quickly from 12th to directly wanting to become an editor or anything, that there's a huge life experience which you sort of just completely crush it into like this whole wanting to quickly reach that ladder, which is fine, matlab, to each his own kind of a thing. But that life experience, that sort of helps, that going through a certain emotion yourself will reflect in whatever material that you work with and what you bring to the table. It's exactly what Namrata is saying. And that I also agree with. Like, I get a lot of these Instagram messages sometimes, and about like people wanting, what should I do? Or should I come and join or whatever? And you want to like just go and do graduation, just live some life and everything, just like do something and then come back to it. Like,
eat some samosas.
You don't have to become. But again, like, this is a world we are living in. It's like might be an archaic thought in 10 years from now when we are talking like this. It's all very going to be quick, anything. But I feel the core value is like just living something, which is why the films that we are making also have that reflection. We're not living ourselves, which is why suddenly South feels like, oh, they are so rooted, or whatever. If they make some little bit here and there, also suddenly feels rooted, which is because most of our makers are urban people, and their life experiences are just watching films and watching shows and around this one. So it's like all boundaries that we are creating among ourselves only.
No, but sorry, I'll just add to this. So I get asked often that, do you hire assistants and associates who are from film school, or do they have to be from film school? I said, I just don't want anything. I just want that person to be able to sit behind me quietly without looking into the phone or doing Instagram. Just watch. That's the basic minimum.
Yeah.
We're looking for Zen monks, basically.
If I get that, then I'm home.
True that, because Manas actually, this
I
goes
stirred
back
up this
Yes.
controversy.
This goes back to my what the discussion that we had recently actually on the Film Editors United Facebook page. But Manas, let me backtrack a bit and ask you as well that how critical you feel the film school journey was.
मुझे लगता है दो तरह के लोग होते हैं. एक होती है जिनकी इच्छा होती है, और एक होते हैं जो जुनूनी होते हैं, पैशनेट, दिल से पैशनेट होते हैं. जो जुनूनी होते हैं ना, उनको किसी की जरूरत नहीं होती, मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ. वो फिल्म स्कूल जाके भी कुछ कर लेते हैं, बिना गए भी कुछ कर लेते हैं, क्योंकि उनको किसी भी कीमत पे हासिल करना होता है, उनको पहुंचना होता है वहां पे. तो मैं उन लोगों में से नहीं था. I was and I've grown up in an environment where we took formal education very seriously. So for me, post college अब like masters नहीं कर रहे हैं, मतलब it's like dire straits, like क्या करेंगे, जिंदगी खत्म हो जाएगी. तो I had to very quickly figure out कि मैं masters में क्या करने वाला हूँ. So and I only knew that I cannot pursue academics, and I really wanted to go into films. I didn't know what in films, but I wanted to go into films. बिकॉज थिएटर करके हम जिंदा नहीं रह सकते थे. तो थिएटर में हम अच्छे थे, पर घर नहीं चलाना मुश्किल होता है, तो फिल्म में चले जाओ. सो देन उस समय तो लाइक गिनती के 2-3 इंस्टीट्यूट से यू गेट थ्रू. एफटीआई का रिजल्ट ही नहीं आता था, एसआरएफटीआई का रिजल्ट आ गया. एसआरएफटीआई में बाय द प्रोसेस ऑफ एलिमिनेशन आई zeroed in on editing. It's actually 2 years into the institute I realized that, oh, I can do this. It's okay, I can pursue this seriously. So I was someone, and I think many of us are like that who sometimes need a nudge, ki maybe this is good for you, and maybe this is something that you can pursue as a profession, and everything else can still carry on as a hobby or something. And probably along the way someday you pursue your other passions. Luckily, film is a sort of a all forms of art come together in this art form, so one can find your own avenue wherever you wish. So usliye matlab I will never negate or sideline that part of my life. And the आज की मतलब adding to what Nitin was saying कि आज की तारीख में 6 साल के बच्चे कोडिंग सीख रहे हैं, 7 साल के बच्चे कोडिंग कर रहे हैं, तो मतलब क्या ही लाइफ एक्सपीरियंसेस की हम बात करें. पर in fact, around the time when I was finishing my course, and I was the youngest in my batch. The average age of my batch was 26, 27. And it was just me and a friend of mine from Bombay. We were 20-year-olds, and we were constantly ragged for that also कि बच्चे आ गए हैं masters करने. So, but we realized that there were people who had done double MAs, MTechs and whatnot. And, they actually had something to say. They wanted to share something with the world, and they wanted this formal education sort of shape their opinions into, give it a form of some kind, basically. And that is when I used to seriously feel ki I wish I would have done a master's before I came here, at least, like not just after bachelor's. So I'm also not very comfortable with the idea of film being taught right at the bachelor's level. I feel that kids should sort of form as fully formed human being. Legal drinking age के तो हो जाओ पहले, like marriageable age के हो जाओ, उसके बाद start pursuing this. And having said all of this, I mean, I am somebody who will always back formal education of any kind in any field. And along with that, also, I definitely feel that we need to raise our teaching standards in this country, as far as art schools are concerned, because most of us, wherever we've reached or wherever we are headed, I feel it's a lot to do that we have done this 2+2 ourselves. And I wish that there was stronger sort of forces around us who were playing a bigger role in shaping our lives and careers, because we chose to go to a formal education space. So that is one thing that I wish our standards improve. And now, taking a leaf from what I was talking about on the Facebook page, was
Yes. Let's first lay the
expose
ground for the. So the conversation is what similar to what we were having here. Trying to understand if we want. So some people, like I think Manas, you said you prefer people who are from film school to assist you, right?
Yes.
And I was I was in a space where I was trying to understand that if I'm asking someone to intern with me before they assist me, is that going to be exploitative? But at the same time, I can't ask for just about anyone, to come on board, expect the production to pay them when they don't have a skill that is contributing to the whatever I'm working on at that point of time. And I think then again, Manas, for instance, you suggested that maybe we take that person on board for about a month, and it's an unpaid internship, and then then we see if they're good or not. To which my concern was that, is that then, because maybe not everyone can afford to go 1 month or 2 months without money. So does that become a question of what kind of privilege you're coming from? And are we then making our space into a space which is only for a certain privileged? So it was like a very a conversation with a lot of these questions. So I'd love to know what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I feel that all internship, that is how internships work. Like interns, when somebody says, I want to be an intern, they obviously are not expecting to be full-fledged employees. So personally, like actually, I've never managed to take an intern because I just don't know what to do with people. Like I'm very bad with people. So I'd love to, but I don't. But the point is that an intern, if I took an intern, I would feel a little bad about, putting them out of pocket. So I would at least, pay them a little bit to cover their, say, traveling costs. A kind of a per day, something that, okay, which you want to get a snack or you want to take a rickshaw from home to work, that little bit possibly an intern can be paid, though I know that most internships are unpaid. I myself did a 1-month internship after my mass comm course, which was, of course, there was no question of any payment. It was part of the course requirements. So there are types and types of internships. I don't think that is a problem. And I don't think that that's got anything to do with privilege, because people can just say that, no, I want a job, I need a salary, I don't want to be an intern, and I would respect that equally. And then I would offer that person a job based on what I think that they can contribute to my work, and decide a salary according to that. So it's cool. I mean, personally,
yeah, for me, actually, it's a little confusing because as Nitin said that you get a lot of DMs on social media asking for work. They want to be, say, assistant editors, but don't have, and they've done, let's say, corporate film work or a few ads here and there. How does one kind of absorb them into the kind of workflow that we are following currently? For me, that's been a little bit of a challenge. So, and I still haven't figured out how one can kind of.
No, you really don't need to absorb everyone. The idea is to, from whatever I feel, sense of that is ki if a person seems interesting to you, like someone who has DM'd or whatever, that person's general thought process or how he is messaged or she has messaged, there's a general intent and general something is there which strikes you at least like we have a conversation. So first thing I would do is like I generally do is I just meet that person by nature and then just see how I can fit in that like a scheme of things mein, how I can fit in that person in somewhere. So if that person like I had this one assistant who had come who messaged me from Ahmedabad. He had made some short film. He messaged and we spoke. And I had like, and he came to Bombay, met me. And then I took him on Gunjan Saxena and he worked as an intern and he picked up everything within 2 months and I got him paid then later on sort of. Then he's working independently, matlab independently as in he's working as an assistant already because all the things that he learned, he's already managed to use it kind of. So that is the process. Matlab for me also, there was that thing in my, at that moment of time, we were also plugged with like a lot of work. So his help was definitely appreciated in terms of what he contributed. So it's like you sort of pick and choose what works for what situation better. It's not like there's any sort of a particular way as to this because it's I'm sure every art form or any sort of this line of work, whether it's films, advertising or anything, we all have the similar set of people wanting to get into and wanting to break in kind of a thing.
One point I wanted to add also was that I feel मसला ये भी है कि हमको ना जो practical जो society है उसको exposure नहीं है how this profession works, not just editing but how the film profession works. You can on the internet you can read how a particular software works, how X person edited X named film and all of that, but there is no building uncle who will give you career advice and who will teach you ki beta, you have to do this course and then you can go and apply in Tata Consultancy Services and will get an internship. So there's no that system so it's almost like we are creating this system on the go. We ourselves, like when I started, I interned with the director who also used to edit, and then I picked up editing with him and then sort of pursued my career from there. So what every time I speak to anybody, whoever approaches me or is in my editing space, I'm like, you have to be ready to commit to this profession, almost like how a young medical student or a law student commits 7, 8, 10 years of their life to this profession. where होता है ना मेडिकल प्रोफेशन में होने के बाद 10 साल के बाद आप सर्जन बनते हो, एक वक्त लगता है, तो एक वक्त लगेगा. अब ये आपके टैलेंट और आपके एप्टीट्यूड के ऊपर आप कितनी जल्दी कैच करके आप you'll sort of but don't think entering कि this will be plug and play. So when you're entering this space, there is a formal structure with which we work, and that is also something that I've only learned after I've come here, not something that I learned in the film school. So once I came here, I understood what is the role of an assistant, what is the role of an associate, what is the role of an editor. And after the final cut is done, there is a healthy bunch of things that need to be done. उसकी भी एक जिम्मेदारी होती है, उसके लिए भी एक एप्टीट्यूड चाहिए होता है, एक tenacity चाहिए होती है to deal with post-production warfare. So, all of that you have to sort of, be ready for and train yourself in. And how else do you do that? One is you enter something and assist something. So in that first week or 2 weeks or whatever, one is just judging कि इससे हो भी सकेगा या नहीं. And sort of exposing that person to this world ki bhaiya, be prepared for what you are entering for. And I'm not necessarily talking about unpaid internships. When I started as an intern, I was paid, and just this auto fare and all of that. But sorry, I'm not going to serve things on a platter to you. You have to work and earn your position.
Yeah.
But can I add to that? I'm what I do is, like, I know this is always a problem. You're not finding assistants, you're not finding associates, at the end of the day, you need to master your project and, deliver it. So what last 2 years I'm trying to, it's like a tricky balance. I always, and it comes to us, it starts with us. We have to insist on more than one person on a team. You cannot make do with just one person, even if it's a film, if it's a whatever film it is. They all have the money.
Yes.
Even if it is say 20K per month to pay for the intern, they have the money. And then I simply say, okay, if suppose the associate has to go to village or sister's getting married, these are all the list of excuses or whatever it comes. The genuine reasons also, one cannot say that you can't go to the village or you can't go here, you've fallen sick, and now even more so with the pandemic. So I insist on having at least two. I mean, Namrata knows my struggle with, getting two people on team. I'm begging, pleading. I said, okay, your work will suffer.
I cannot work without two people.
Can't work.
I need two people.
Yeah. And the second one, like I mentioned in the post, has to be a person who's training, either training from scratch or kind of knows the job a little bit at hand. He or she knows what to do. And then from there, within 1 or 2 months, this person's going to work or not. Then a lot of it is trial and error. But when we have to insist on a team, if camera and sound can work with a team, why not editors?
Yeah, and also this lack of focus in organizing, because now there's so much volume of work, but people don't want to spend any time organizing, subclipping, things like that. These are all, suddenly I keep hearing that's such an archaic way of working. Like, it's okay. I want to work the archaic way. I don't want to enter modernism.
It's archaic if you want to be subclipping.
What
Wow.
nonsense? Who has told you this? Please message me later so I never work with that person.
No, but a lot of people have stopped subclipping.
Yeah,
I have done so many
subclipping
timelines. People just put it on timeline and they work through timelines.
With a clip number.
Yeah.
With a clip number. So if you want to go back and re-find something,
No way.
all the best.
No.
Then you need 3 people as assistants.
And even more so, I'm sorry, because of this premiere, they have started doing everything, and editing has become copy-paste from one timeline to the other.
Yes.
That's how I work.
I totally feel you. Because I've got a project right now, which was unfortunately passed through like 2 other editors. And I have got exactly this, Shweta. I've got timelines with clip numbers and no subclips. So right now, my team and one has to convince the production that this is not, I can't work like this. And then, so basically now the whole thing is being reorganized. But yeah, what a nightmare.
I want to tell this to people, the kids out there who want to become editors. Copy pasting is not editing, please.
Okay, one thing that I actually, when you said, Antara, that you want to do this editors, talk to a bunch of editors, one thing I wanted to really say is that, none of us actually know how other editors work.
Yeah.
I have never been to each editor has their own method. Okay, so, and I really would love to kind of, sit in on, in other editing rooms and understand what we have in common, because obviously we do have a lot in common. We all manage to produce, like films at the end of it. We are all like capable of delivering finished films. And that itself means we are, we have a lot in common. But at the same time, I bet all our methods, like how I work on the edit physically, but also how I work with my assistants, how I work with, so many other things, I would really love to know and learn.
So this was actually exactly what I was coming to. And I'm going to start with Hemonti. So I was reading, Jableen, your article on Renu Saluja, which resurfaced after a few years. I think it's again resurfaced. And I so identified with what you said about, keeping a notebook, which will have, like instructions for the assistant and memos for the editor. That's one. And also making sure you're organizing, the assistant is organizing the project in a way such that if tomorrow someone on the edit team is dead, you can still find the other person can still find their way around. So, Hemonti, I wanted to know from you, and again, from the perspective of trying to understand how we all work. Hemonti, how do you prefer organizing your project, or what are the instructions you're giving your team?
Yeah, that I am very strict about. Organize it perfectly so that at least things don't get lost, and subclip, put it in correct bins, put it in correct folders. Otherwise, it's like the way we used to put every scene in different cans, and the cans would be organized
Exactly.
exactly the same way. I mean, that's something Renu had taught us, and we just continue.
I think also it's so difficult to make assistants sometimes understand what used to happen with us in Steenbeck practicals. That if you lost one frame of sound, your entire project or whatever you're working on is just one frame out sync. So I think that, and then we had to stand in the bin. So our professor Detu Mandal used to make us stand in the bin and pull out all the film strips and look for that one frame, because if you have misplaced it. And so we were all of us, I think, who worked on Steenbeck, I think have that discipline of really, because we marked every frame. Right. And I think that has been a little difficult to translate, particularly in a world where we are just kind of getting flip numbers on a timeline.
Yeah, I find it very difficult if people work like that. I've not figured out how they do it.
It's advertising.
So the only advantage is that you can't go to somebody else's bin and steal a shot, which we used to do a lot.
Because the editor cannot find it themselves. Basically, unhe hi nahi milega. It's like trying to find that one top you had, not possible. It's just not possible. But so I feel, organize nahi karenge to kam assistants ke saath kaam kar sakte hain. And then, but you can only do one cut, because if you want to keep revisiting your cuts, keep going back to the rushes, you need it to be organized. There is no shortcut to that. It's 60% of editing is organizing.
Yeah, actually, even after each day, I just sit and spend half an hour to organize everything.
Same.
Yeah, sometimes though, even at the cost of, like, nowadays, just after 2 days of shoot, the whole direction department start getting impatient. Na, kuch dikhao. It's like, it reminds me of that Polaroid camera. Na, wo खींचा और सामने photo आ गई, तो like ऐसे edit चाहिए सबको. तो अभी like कुछ नहीं मिलेगा 10 दिन तक, क्योंकि ऑर्गेनाइजिंग चल रही है. अभी कुछ नहीं मिला, अभी नहीं करूंगा, ये बाद में कोई नहीं बैठ के ऑर्गेनाइज करेगा ना, शूटिंग के दौरान नहीं होगा. तो अभी एक काम चल रहा है, किसी को कुछ देखना है, आप रशेस देख लो जाके.
Yeah, also it's like people shooting on so many different formats. So you're getting clips from like 5 different cameras. One scene is being shot on 3 different cameras. I don't understand how to work without doing your basic organization.
The biggest thing is during an editing, this is the prime example of how I explain to assistants why one needs to organize, is that you are at the 7th month of your edit and you've lost all hope. You're like, cut approve ही नहीं हो रहा है. And you're like, यार you suddenly, and the director is like, यार ये scene में ये shot मैंने लिया था, इसका एक और take था, वो क्यों नहीं है? And you're like, नहीं है. And suddenly you go into your Finder window and you find it. It's in the Finder, it's not in the bin. And उस समय मेरा जो ऐसा मतलब, I go pale because I'm like, what if the other 140 scenes also have this issue? Then I'm like, 7 महीने की मेहनत बर्बाद. So I was like,
this is, sorry to interrupt you, but this is something I have learned the hard way over years. If the director has this crazy memory from the shoot, and if the director says वो एक shot था, वो चाहे कहीं लिखा नहीं हो, कहीं mention नहीं हो, वो होगा ही, कहीं तो भी हो, even if it's unusable. Maybe they remember something that you can't use, but it's always effing there.
But that's like now 1 out of 10 directors know this. Otherwise, rest 9 don't even remember what they have shot.
That's a different
I feel so wounded.
I think I agree with Shweta. The memory and the directors all are good and all that, but like I have seen the opposite side only most of the time. कि उनके दिमाग में shot है, shot वहाँ पर bin में कभी नहीं है.
हाँ, नहीं है, बिल्कुल. आपने लगाया लेकिन आपने shoot नहीं किया.
ये जरूर होता है.
लगाया नहीं था, देखा था वहाँ पे shot है.
Exactly.
लिया नहीं था.
I have actually met someone like that.
ये जरूर हुआ है that they were not looking at the viewfinder, they were looking at the actor as well. Like ये frame था, like sir frame आपने ये लगाया.
So then the first AD is called. The first AD will say, "Sir, आपने तो cancel कर दिया वो."
The worst, the pitch is when after finding, I don't find it. Where do I find it? Because आजकल digital की वजह से you know, keep rolling में एक बार pan कर दिया shot and suddenly it becomes a close up. I was like, ये देखो मैं बोल रहा था ना shot है. I was like ये किसको मिलेगा, कैसे मिलेगा?
Yeah.
You're working with some avant-garde directors for sure.
ये मेरे साथ भी कल ही हुआ कि नहीं, मैं zoom लेंस पे मैंने शॉट किया है. तो वो एक्चुअली जूम लेंस पे क्या शॉट लिया है, वो वाइड ही था जो धीरे धीरे ऐसे जा रहा था किसी पॉइंट पे.
Jabin, I know you are also a stickler for organization because all the people who passed out have whoever's assisted you has always kind of learned that very critical factor from you. Do you think that also comes from when you're working on documentaries with a very high volume of footage? Does it kind of percolate down from there?
Exactly. You're right. That is where it comes from because, this thing that all of you are talking about, ke bahut zyada footage hai, digital mein, they keep rolling. But, that used to, documentaries were always shot on tape and, then on DV cameras and things. Even when, so fiction features, people still had, limited, like unless you were like some super 100 crore film, you were shooting on 35mm film, literally on film strips. So that footage was always limited. But while that was happening, documentary makers were shooting on little mini DV tapes, and one tape was could take 1 hour. And, the tapes are very cheap. So you could have, it was very common to have 80 hours, 100 hours to make what at the end of the day, a half an hour documentary or a 45-minute or a 52-minute or whatever, right? Then I remember there was, this was 2002, I remember very clearly, Rakesh Sharma made this film called Final Solution on the Gujarat. And I didn't edit for him, but I worked with him for like a few days, helped him out with something. And he had 200 hours. He had 200 tapes, and that was like, wow, he has 200 hours. But then people switched from tape to those cards, right? The chotu cards which they would put in, those small Panasonic cameras they shoot with. And suddenly the cards could be reused. So then people lost track. And now when I ask people, how much footage do you have? They'll tell me I have 2 TB. And I'll be like, but at what resolution? I want to know how many hours, but nobody knows how many hours they have. So, yeah. And, documentaries also being resource poor, at least the kind of documentaries I've always worked on, people never had any money. So they were barely able to pay the editor. So having an assistant was out of the question. So I've learned to do that physically myself. And as, Namrata was saying, that organizing is actually part of your creativity. It is part of your creative process. So when I organize material, it allows me to enter. It allows me to actually familiarize myself to imprint each shot and each frame on my brain because I'm moving things from here to there. I'm numbering it. I'm labeling it. I'm naming it. I'm classifying it. And I can't function without that.
Nitin, I wanted to ask you as well, how are you how particular are you with the organization and what is the preferred workflow that you follow?
Organization is pretty much what we've been discussing in terms of the general process of brushes coming in, subclips. This is something that have been inculcated in terms of our working flow, in terms of something that I've also taken from Shweta. And that is it's a process, it's a simple, refined process. Everything is in its place. Everything has a bin. You have a very designed music bin, mein music rahega. Sab, har cheez ke liye alag bin jaise rakhte hain. Process wise, I am not the one organizing, of course, like in terms of like mostly it's the assistants who are organizing, but thankfully my team now is equipped in terms of they know as to how I like my organization to be done, and that's how they pretty much organize it. So whether it's like a flow wise, how it will be laid out. Edit flow wise, so of course it's varied, like it changes from film to film, and sometimes you want to like film or show or whatever, like a show will have like the associate will do that first pass and then you sort of come with a flow or whatever, or a film where you will have like where the director is constantly coming in and seeing the scenes or whatever, so there you are already sitting on the scene. So that I feel that keeps modulating as per the requirement and the demand of like what is the time frame that's constantly juxtaposed with like what sort of a, but the process is pretty much clean and simple for me. Like I don't like to complicate. I like my organization. I can't work with like just footage being put in a timeline. But I'm surprised like a lot of film school people, when I see that a lot of film school people apply this process. So I'm surprised quite to see like these are legit film school editors and everything, and they are like working through that process. That I'm quite surprised with, because I like that is something that I feel like that is inculcated. Because if like the top people are asking ki, okay, let's just put it on timeline and fatafat cut karo na. So there it starts changing, because the assistants start thinking ki haan, ye why are we wasting time doing all this kind of a thing? That sort of a process.
If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to this channel so you're tuned in for our upcoming episodes.